What a message, man.
For sure.
Thrive Without Compromise was the title of this message. Next week, we move into message number 2. And we got a little special thing for you before we want to leave, because we wanted to preview the sermon. So we called Mac and prepared him for this and to give you an insight from his mouth. We was going to do it. And I was like, why don't we just call him? So we're going to call Mac and get his input on what the sermon is going to be, sermon number 2, to give you a preview coming up.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, look, here he is. Mac, you are on with Ben and myself. We are talking to the people about your message this past Sunday, and we want to get your outlook on where you're going with message number 2. Message number 1, again, was Thrive Without Compromise. What's message number 2 going to be about, Mac?
Well, great. I'm excited to listen to you guys' work and your analysis of things this past Sunday. So I appreciate you including me in on this and getting a little preview of what's coming up. So the second message in the series comes from Daniel chapter 2. Those 3 years of intensive indoctrination in Babylonian religion, culture, magic, and morals is completed. So this puts Daniel and those 3 other guys, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, at about 18 years old. So they're young men now. And God's going to do something really strange. He gives the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, and by the way, I feel like I could shorten the sermons by about 6 minutes if I didn't have to say Nebuchadnezzar every time his name comes up. Like 14 letters, 5 syllables.
Yeah.
I should call him Neb or Nebi or the Nebster.
Nebi.
But God gives the king a bad night's sleep, and Nebuchadnezzar has a nightmarish dream. And so what he does is he's gonna call for his wise men. And I'm saying that, and you can't see it, but I'm saying that in quotation marks, right? These are his magicians, occultists, the enchanters, and astrologers.
Yeah.
And he calls on them to interpret the dream. But he throws in a caveat. He refuses to tell them the dream. He gets a bit of an attitude, and he essentially says, is this high-paying job I'm paying you all this money for, is this for real, or is it just bull?
Mm-hmm.
If you're really connected to the supernatural, then you ought to be able to tell me what I dreamed.
Right.
And then you ought to be able to interpret it. And if you can't tell me what I dreamed, then I'm going to kill all the wise men. I'm going to eliminate the job of magi from my cabinet, and I'm going to eliminate all of you while I'm at it. And so, there's no way for them to know his dream. So he plans to kill all the wise men. Only problem is that now includes Daniel and the other 3 guys. That's the degree that they got at Babylon U, and that's the job that they hold. So in a turn of events, Daniel ends up before the king, and he tells the king, what you've requested, no man can do, including me. But there is a God in heaven who can. And that's what I titled the message, but there is a God in heaven. And of course, the condensed version of the outcome is that Daniel is going to tell him what he dreamed, which, by the way, is an intriguing little piece of prophecy that we're going to talk about in the message. Yeah. But Daniel turns to God. He trusts God. He asks God, and God reveals to him what the king dreamed. And then he interprets it, and Nebuchadnezzar promotes Daniel to become chief over all the wise men. But wrapped up in the story, I think, are some amazing insights and principles that show us really 2 things. One, what is God doing when we're facing a crisis like that, when we're trying to decide if we're going to choose faith or fear? And then also, what can we do? What should we do when we're faced with choosing faith and fear or fear? And why we can choose faith, why God can be trusted. So what's happening in this part of Daniel's story really goes back to that Daniel 1:8, when Daniel purposed in his heart up front not to defile God by just assimilating into the Babylonian culture. And that conviction that he had, which is built on faith in a God that he knows personally, the way that God wants all of us to know him,
Yes.
it's going to work. It's going to stand when he faced a situation that had these, potentially serious consequences. And of course, that's what we need today in a culture that's less and less friendly to Christianity and in some cases downright hostile.
Yeah.
Daniel's he's getting ready to be killed, and that's probably not the situation that most of us are going to find ourselves in. But we are going to be faced with being possibly made fun of, or being cut out of a social group, or canceled, or possibly fired from a job.
Yeah.
So there's some great and practical things that we can get from this passage to better equip us to live as Christians in a non-Christian environments that we find ourselves in. One, why we should be faithful to Christ instead of compromising, and then how to make sure you can do it when your time comes. So I think it'll be a good one.
That sounds really good. There is a God in heaven. Message number 2. We just got finished talking about message number 1, thrive without compromise. And what going through my mind the whole time Mac was talking right there is Daniel's going to put God in a situation to be God. Will he follow through or will he not? And that's a big point in our lives. And so as we work through this together, big questions to think about this week.